Wednesday, the 29th of April. I am still Gill Stannard Naturopath and mentor, and I still have been turning up every weekday at 1 Australian Eastern Standard Time. I am in my slightly dark kitchen, so excuse the lighting if it's not quite right. I've got my penny on, my apron on, and I have been looking in the pantry. So one thing that really surprised me is I thought I had a stack of unused things in my pantry because I'm always kind of buying, some weird grain or seed or nut or something interesting. I do have a few. I do have that ottolenghi corner of my cupboard. Do you have one of those too, with your bearberries and your sumac? No black garlic because I couldn't get it at the time. But today I want to look at whole foods, and also I know that there's been a lot of comfort food eaten during lockdown time, and just wondered perhaps if I could inspire you to give some of these forgotten pantry items a go if you haven't done that already. Yeah? What do you reckon? So first, and I will post recipe links for these in both Facebook and on my YouTube channel. Just Google Gill Stannard Naturopath to find that. First cab off the rank in the kitchen today is some quinoa. Let's get a look at both of those. So quinoa can come in different colours. Some are kind of reddy and some are more darker than that, blacker than that, browner. But it's my bad labels. It's actually a seed, though we think of it as a grain and we cook it like a grain. And quinoa is really high in protein. Quite a few years ago now, I did a superfood series, or kind of debunking superfoods, on my website, an article, and most of the things that I covered really could debunk. But quinoa is something that is quite good. The first thing about quinoa is, although some sources of quinoa, some places where you buy your quinoa in packets probably, it may say it's been pre-rinsed. If in doubt, wash it really well. So throw it in a sieve, have some water running, and kind of work your fingers through it. You might notice it gets a little bit soapy. So what happens is that this very clever plant makes a natural insecticide that kind of coats its seeds because it wants to continue living. So it doesn't want all its seeds to be eaten by predators and to become extinct. Now, for us, it's a bit of a soapy, bitterish residue that doesn't kill us, but it can give us a bit of a tummy upset. So if you've had quinoa before and you didn't really like it, make sure it's really, really well rinsed before you use it. So quinoa, I like to do a couple of things with. I kind of like sweet things and savoury things. So under breakfast on my food section of gillstannard.com.au, there are a couple of recipes which are quite quick to make, really. It kind of takes no more time than porridge. It makes a really nice change to porridge. So I've got one which is a creamy quinoa, and I tend to use an alternate milk like soy milk or coconut milk, usually kind of 1 part quinoa to 1 part alternate milk and 1 part water. It's really nice with some kind of toasted up slivered almonds, or just get whole almonds and chop them up a bit and toast them first. A little bit of sweetness if you want in the form of maple syrup. That's really, really yummy breakfast or dessert. Also do a different version of that using orange, so freshly squeezed orange or orange juice, and some ginger juice. So if you haven't got a Japanese ginger grater from the hardware store like I got, just use you can use a regular grater, and if you've got a muslin or a clean tea towel or something like that, just kind of squeeze the juice out. And I sweeten that with a tiny bit of maple as well. So there are a couple of sweet recipes. Savoury, really, really simple thing to do is make a quinoa pilaf. So you've got your veggies cooked up, some flavours, some aromatics, like garlic and onion. You've rinsed your quinoa, you throw it in, and you add probably 1.5 to 2 parts, 1 part quinoa to 1.5 to 2 parts veggie stock to make your pilaf. My other savoury favourite with quinoa is a tomato soup with quinoa. So make your kind of favourite tomato soup particularly nice when tomatoes are in season. If you are using canned tomatoes, I would actually add, the trick with tin tomatoes is to add a little bit of sugar, just like half a teaspoon of sugar. And, in a regular kind of 4 medium-sized serves of tomato soup, I would add maybe just half a cup of the rinsed quinoa and give that about 15 minutes to cook, and it just adds a little bit of body, but lightness to it and that extra protein. So quinoa is one of those things that I love to eat, but I often forget about. So this is why I've got it out of the back of the cupboard. Another thing, so we talked about porridge and about breakfast. So these are chia seeds. They're just black little things, and the trick about chia is that it needs to be soaked to, yes, sometimes it turns up in mueslis that people don't soak, but it's a bit kind of gritty and a bit crunchy, but it really, really soaks up a lot of fluid. It takes a couple of hours or overnight to do it, and it makes a really nice breakfast or dessert. So I tend to use 3 tablespoons of quinoa to 1 cup of alternative milk. Some people use, if you like it a bit looser, I probably use 1.5 cups of milk. Some people use a 1:8 ratio, but that's kind of like the recipe that I've done that works for me. Recently, I wanted to switch it up a bit, and I was actually making up some almond milk, which was from a really, really kind of looked like almost like the consistency of tahini paste that a company is selling, that you basically then blend that up with water, and you've got instant almond milk. So I did that, and I added in a really good handful, about a cupful of frozen raspberries to make a raspberry raspberry chia pudding. And, the next day, my chia pudding, I will have it with maybe some fresh fruit, maybe some walnuts, sometimes some cacao nibs if I really want to be, a cliche, a naturopath cliche. And that's pretty yum. So that was the chia seeds, and the chia seeds are quite filling. Sometimes if I've kind of got, I might make chia pudding for a couple of days and keep it in the fridge. The other trick with chia is that when you're mixing your milk alternative or your milk and your chia together, leave it on the bench for maybe 10-15 minutes before you put it in the fridge, and go back a few times and stir it so it doesn't get lumpy. We don't like lumpy anything. But if I've got a bit less left out of the bowl, I might mix that with some soaked chia with my porridge, or usually muesli. It's pretty nice. The other goodie that I find tends to be forgotten about is millet. I can't see if my friend Jane's on the feed. She usually is. I always remember when Jane first discovered millet, I learned a very, very important lesson, which was there's a big difference between hulled millet and unhulled millet. And we might think we're doing the right whole foody thing by getting unhulled millet, but don't. That's birdseed. You can boil it forever, and it is just not going to do its thing, really. This is when you get the whole stuff, and it's quite fine. It's a very similar sort of size to chia seeds. There's 2 recipes that I have on, that's just my iPad going off skewer for the Insta live. Two recipes I quite like for millet. One I think was a Tony Kyoto recipe for cauliflower, kind of a creamy cauliflower mash and millet mash. And I also can make a pilaf. So pilaf is basically, as I talked about the pilaf for the quinoa, you've got your aromatics, you've got your onion and your garlic cooked up, and then you're throwing in some diced vegetables and cooking them up. Then you're throwing your grain or your seedy grain in with a heap of stock and stirring it from time to time till it starts to evaporate and the grains or the seeds, if it's quinoa, are cooked. So millet's quite good for that. It's not as fussy as quinoa in the sense that you don't have to rinse off that natural insecticide off it. But if it's been sitting around for a while, I would still probably give it a bit of a rinse before putting it in. And when we're talking about, I should go to the pantry to grab this, but when we're talking about, there's Jane's just remembered the unhulled millet. I can just see here on the feed. I like to use, there are times that I get very good and just put all my lovely organic vegetable discards, like, the green part of the leek and, carrot tops and bits and pieces, and keep them in a bag or a container in the freezer until I've got enough to make some stock. But otherwise, my favourite stock is actually an English one, so sorry about the food miles. It's Marigold, and they do some bouillons. So it's a powder or a cube, and that's really nice. It's not too salty. So I'm just going to go through, I've gone a bit over time, so I just want to give you one last store cupboard favourite, pantry favourite today. So lentils. What do you do with lentils? So can you see that I shop at a co-op? So they're all in reused jars most of the time. So the red lentils, these are the little green lentils. For dal, I really love using red lentils, and I've got a dal recipe with lots of ways you can vary it on my website. I actually really, really like dal. Sometimes too, I might throw in some chana dal. So that's almost a bit kind of cuboid looking. And I would probably use, 2 or 3 times the amount of red lentils to a bit of chana dal. That just gives it a bit more texture. I even found some, that's my chana dal. That was the split peas. So that was yellow split peas, which are really nice. And I'd use in a similar way to chana dal. They're basically the same thing, really. These guys, though, the green, the darker ones, or the special French ones, these are the special French style, but, there's a domain on the name. I kind of I don't tend to make dals out of this. I would kind of I'd cook them up and add them to a vegetable shepherd's pie, with some cooked up veggies, onion and garlic again, and whatever herbs you like, maybe some parsley. Throw in some cooked lentils. Lentils you don't have to soak overnight. They're really easy to use. The red lentils cook even faster, but these I'd add to a kind of a shepherd's pie, and maybe add some tofu or lentils, and then top it with some mash and bake it in the oven. That's what I call fiddly cooking. It's a really basic dish, but you've got to kind of cook these guys, do all the veggies, do the mash, then throw them all together and put in the pie. So I've got it into the oven, so I've got to be patient to do that. But this also kind of cooked and drained well, goes really nicely in a lot of salads. So you don't have to get the Pew lentils, just get these Australian or non-French version, and they're fine. So thanks for joining me in my pantry today, in my slightly dark kitchen. And I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. AEST or 3 p.m. in New Zealand. Hope you enjoyed that. And I will put the recipes on Facebook and on the YouTube channel. Have a good day, guys. I'll try to end this properly today. 1 and 2.